Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and I am spiraling out of control. Things are busy. Like, so busy. And I'm also I'm trying to, not just work, all right? Work is always busy. But I'm also trying to go down this path of trying to make these new connections and meet new people with all of these different autism awareness groups and education organizations and all of that, which is just the biggest oxymoron because my biggest thing is I don't do social interactions well. And so now I got to go meet people and talk about things. Sounds terrible, but there's also a ton of opportunity there. And it's just a lot. There's a lot going on. And so on top of doing this podcast and the other podcasts that I do for work, which probably not interesting to this audience, but yeah, it's a lot, bro. It's a lot. And so it's hard to find the energy at the end of the day or the end of the week to do the things that I enjoy doing. And so I am working on it, and I have found a small window where I feel like recording an episode. So we're doing it. Granted, is that episode being fueled by panic, despair, anxiety, and overwhelmedness, whatever that word is? Yeah, absolutely it is. But that's also just how I live my life right now on a daily basis. It's a lot of fun. I can't recommend it at all. Anyway, what are we talking about this week? We're talking about some unusual uprisings in history, some rebellions and whatever other words there are, coups, maybe a coup, but really just odd, not like odd in like the January 6th thing. Like that was more just sad, but these are weird, and we're going to look at them right now. So we're looking at three stories today. We are looking at the Jayuya Uprising, the Hanafi Siege, and our first story here of Murder Island, which was named after Captain James Murder, who was a philanthropic missionary with really just an unfortunate last name. I mean, kind of like those people whose last names are like Slaughter. Like, it's sad. But he landed on this island off the coast of Australia in 1629 and actually converted the entire island of Aborigines to Catholicism. And we learned about him in our Christian school. I mean, like, even though like I grew up in a Free Will Baptist Christian school, we pretty much most of our history outside of like presidents and wars was just missionaries. Like, we spent so much time on people like David Livingston, D.L. Moody, Billy Sunday, all these people who, like, fine, they were part of history. I get it. But we didn't need to spend half of a year on the Great Awakenings. We didn't. We just didn't. There were more important things to learn about. But we did learn about this guy, Captain James Murder, just this British missionary who he converted this entire island to Catholicism. And like I said, like, even though we thought that Catholics were just dirty, hell-bound sinners, and like, our teachers, when they went over this guy, were, really kind of flippant about it. But it was really spun in a way just like, this is the kind of ambition and drive that all missionaries should possess, even if they're spreading lies about Jesus and worshiping Mary and all the other silly things that Catholics do. But whatever, we learned about him, and Murder actually worked with the British government after he had converted this entire island to Catholicism. He worked with the British government to actually set up schools and a working government on this island. And it was a really successful island. Like the Aborigines, a lot of historians will tell you, like Australian historians will tell you, that Murder Island and the Aborigines there were on track to be kind of the driving force behind the entire country of Australia's GDP. Like they were doing so many good things with even just a small island. But then in 1695, a cyclone came through, one of the most powerful cyclones in the Indian Ocean's history, and it just wiped out this entire island. All right. Very few survivors. All of the buildings got destroyed, and just the island never recovered. And if you believed any of that crap, what are you doing? Why are you here? None of that's true. None of that's true. And look, and I know a couple of people I went to school with were probably listening to that and be like, I don't remember that at all. Yeah, because it didn't happen. There was no Captain James Murder. No, none of that's true. I don't know why I just wasted like 4 minutes of this episode going down that rabbit hole, but I did. The real story happened on October 28th, 1628, when the Dutch East India Company launched a ship named the Batavia from the Netherlands en route to Jakarta, Indonesia. There were 341 people on board, along with a large amount of silver and spices that were to be delivered to Indonesia. But not long after the ship set sail, people on board began plotting a mutiny to turn the Batavia into a pirate ship. Because, 1600s, that's just what happened. The plan started when a group of rebels sexually assaulted the daughter of a wealthy merchant with the hopes of eliciting retaliation from the Dutch government, but the Dutch government didn't really care. So on June 4th, 1629, the Batavia actually ended up striking Morning Reef, roughly 40 miles off the coast of Western Australia. And when it did that, the ship immediately began to sink. People were jumping overboard, trying to swim to nearby islands. But in the process, in the panic and the chaos of this ship going down, 40 people on board died. Once the survivors had all kind of collected themselves on the same island, a guy named Geronimus Cornelis, took the initiative to proclaim himself the leader of the group and started making plans to start a new kingdom with the goods that had been salvaged from the shipwreck. Like, he wasn't even going to try to get rescued. He's just like, yeah, this is we're going to just make a new country now. And this is our life now. Going to just deal with it. He and his gang then imprisoned everyone that they felt threatened their power, which turned out to be most of the people who survived the shipwreck. Cornelis then requested a group of soldiers led by Weeby Hayes to go to the next island over to see if they could find some fresh water, because this current island they were on, not really big enough to have like a spring or anything. So he told Hayes' group to light signal fires when they found water, and once they saw the signal, Cornelis would then come retrieve them with one of the Batavia's longboats. However, Cornelis, in his plan, he never actually intended on bringing those people back to the island. He was just going to send them off and then kill them, because obviously that means more water for him. So with the soldiers out of the way, Cornelis and his men just started killing everything that annoyed them, which basically just turned into killing everything for fun. They murdered a baby to stop it from crying, which I think is an effective method. I don't condone it, but that's a way to make a baby stop crying. I can't argue with the results there. They also decapitated a young boy just to test out the sharpness of their blades. They also just killed an entire family just because. Like, no real reason. They just did it. And by the end of July, over 100 more people were dead. All right. So there were, what did I say? There were like 341 people on this boat. All right. 40 people died in the shipwreck. All right. So you have 301 people. you got Cornelis, he's the leader. He's got 300 other people to try to figure out what to do with. So he kills 60 of them pretty much within a month, which is insane. And then meanwhile, while he's killing all of these people, the group of soldiers that he had sent over to the other island, they're having a party. Everything's going great. All right. Hayes and his men had actually found plenty of food and plenty of fresh water and had actually started accepting refugees from the other island, because Cornelis, he was ignoring their signal fires, and he was just busy killing everybody. And people who were on the island with Cornelis, they were trying to escape, and they were just swimming over to the other island where they were like being welcomed as refugees and getting asylum. Hayes quickly obviously learned of all the mass murder that was going on, and so he started building his own weapons from the shipwrecked materials and constructed a fort to keep watch in case Cornelis and his men decided to invade. For the next 3 months, these people are marooned for 3 months, 4 months technically, because we're already a month in. Both parties waited for help. On the Fun Island, life went on as usual. All right. But on Murder Island, which is how this island got its name, life was essentially like a scene out of Lord of the Flies. If you've seen that movie, I haven't, but I get the context and the reference. As women were repeatedly being raped, obviously, what else are they going to do? And most everyone else who did not have a vagina was just murdered. Cornelis also launched several attacks on Hayes' Island once he found out that there was food and water over there, but each time his group got defeated. When the rescue ship, the Sardam, finally arrived, both Cornelis and Hayes raced out to the ship to tell their side of the story and try to get them on their respective sides. Captain Francisco Pelser sided with Hayes because he had basically committed the least amount of murders. Together, Pelser and Hayes then launched an attack on Murder Island, and within a few hours, everyone there, at least in power, had been captured. The rebels, Cornelis and his men, were then water tortured in order to get the entire story, which resulted in all of them either getting hanged, having their hands chopped off, which sounds terrible, or just being taken to Jakarta for a more formal execution. In the end, this is what's crazy. Only 68 people originally on board the Batavia made it to Jakarta. All right. So Cornelis ended up killing, between the shipwreck and Cornelis, 250 people or more died. Like, it's over 250. Yeah. Died. Like, it's crazy. Today, archaeologists actually are still excavating the remains of people who were shipwrecked and massacred on Murder Island. Like, they're still finding bodies. It's insane. Our next story here starts in 1922 when a group of men founded the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party with the primary goal of making Puerto Rico an independent nation. By the 1930s, the American government wasn't really a fan of this group because they saw them as a rebel group. And so they arrested Albizu Campos, the party's president, and sent him to a federal prison in Atlanta. On March 21st, 1937, the police showed up at a nationalist parade expecting a coup, and then they ended up shooting 19 people. So things not going great. In 1947, Campos, he's out of prison and he returns to Puerto Rico and is greeted with new laws prohibiting the creation and distribution of anti-government materials, as well as the organization and assembly of any group with the intent to overthrow the government. And by the government, I mean the American government. Even though Puerto Rico wasn't even a state, it was just like a protected territory. It's weird how all of this was worked. I mean, and here's the thing. Although this law was a clear violation of the First Amendment, under which Puerto Rico was protected, the United States government didn't care because, like I said, Puerto Rico wasn't a state, and the tradition of treating the island like a forgotten colony just continued on. And for the next few years, however, the nationalists, they kind of survived underground and they prepared for an armed revolution, which is exactly what happens when you try to just take people's rights away. On October 26, 1950, Campos was holding a meeting in the city of Fajardo, when someone told him that the police had surrounded his home in San Juan and wanted to arrest him after having already arrested several other nationalist leaders. So basically, he's being told that there's this sting operation going on, and a lot of people in the Nationalist Party are getting arrested. At that point, Campos was just like, nah, dog. And he orders the revolution to begin. And he picks the town of Jayuya halfway across the island as the place where it would happen. The next day, police in Peñuela. That's weird. That's a weird word. It's spelled like Peñuelas, but it's got that little accent over the end. So you go that nye, and my mouth can't do that. Peñuelas, whatever, it's a town. They intercepted a nationalist caravan heading for Jayuya and actually killed 4 people. 3 days later, nationalists staged revolts in several Puerto Rican towns, including Ponce, Mayagüez, Naranjito, Arecibo, Utuado, and San Juan, killing it on the accent. Meanwhile, in Jayuya, nationalists gathered at the home of Blanca Canales, one of the nationalist leaders, where she had been stockpiling weapons, which always a good start. The nationalists all armed themselves and then marched to the police station in Jayuya, and within minutes, one officer was dead, and then the rest of the police force surrendered. The nationalists then cut the telephone lines and burned down the post office. Canales, this woman, led the group into the town square and raised the Puerto Rican flag and then declared Puerto Rico an independent republic. Luis Marin, the governor of the island, immediately declared martial law, but instead of sending in the National Guard to calm the situation, Marin called the Air Force and sent P-47 Thunderbolt bombers, set up artillery and mortar fire on the perimeter of town, and had Puerto Rican soldiers lob grenades into the city. It's a full-on war zone. The planes machine gunned nearly every building in Jayuya, destroying 70% of the city. And not surprisingly, the nationalists quickly surrendered. All right, because it's like they probably didn't expect the Puerto Rican governor to essentially call in the United States military that was based in Puerto Rico to just come and just bomb this entire city. Word got out, obviously, reached the States. Nationalists who were actually living in New York City at the time actually made plans to assassinate President Harry S. Truman. And at that time, the White House was actually undergoing renovation. So Truman was staying at the Blair House in another part of Washington, D.C. And on November 1st, a group of nationalists attacked the Blair House with no other plan than to just shoot everything in their path until they got to the president. However, obviously, they did not plan on running into a guy named Leslie Coffelt, who was a White House police officer standing at the doorway. Coffelt was shot 3 times, but managed to kill one of the attackers with a single shot to the head and then prevented the others from getting any further. But he did die from his wounds a few hours later. But he stopped, the president from getting assassinated. So, sure, cool. Back in Puerto Rico, all of the nationalist leaders were arrested and sent to prison. Most of them were, however, eventually released. President Truman did go on to authorize a referendum in 1952 to clarify the United States' relationship with Puerto Rico, which basically just kept things as they were rather than grant them statehood, which, I'm not well-versed in politics, but I don't understand why Puerto Rico isn't a state. It's big enough to be a state. It's got enough of a population to be a state. It'd be a great vacation spot for people. I guess you could vacation there now, but still, I don't know. You could put a baseball team there. You could still do that now. Basically the point is why isn't it a state? I could probably educate myself on that further. It just doesn't make sense. Anyway, our final story here happened on March 9th, 1977, when a dozen gunmen from the Hanafi movement, which was the splinter sect of the Nation of Islam, which great group of people, by the way. I'm kidding. They entered 3 different buildings in Washington, D.C., and took a total of 149 people hostage. It started when 7 gunmen broke into a Jewish community center and took 100 hostages because Islam and Jews. An hour later, 3 more gunmen went into the Islamic Center of Washington and took 11 more hostages. So now we're just taking everybody hostage, right? That's like the Proud Boys going into a Baptist church and taking everyone hostage. Just doesn't. Those are the people who are going to most likely be on your side. Like, go to a gender studies class at a college. Those are going to be your enemies, right? Anyway, the final 2 gunmen went to the district building, which was the government headquarters for the city of Washington, D.C., and began looking for important people to kidnap. Those 2 gunmen found their targets on the 5th floor of the district building. However, they were so nervous about actually going through with the kidnapping that when an elevator door opened, they immediately thought that the Marines had broken into the building and started like just firing their weapons all willy-nilly. Instead, it was just a guy named Maurice Williams, who was a radio reporter looking for someone to interview for a boring government report, and he was immediately killed, right? Like, you don't just take a face full of machine gun bullets and survive. Future mayoral train wreck Marion Barry was also hit in the chest with a ricocheting bullet and rushed to the hospital. And if you don't know Marion Barry's story, go look it up. He was the mayor, I think, of Washington, D.C. for a while, and he was up to some shenanigans. The group's leader, Hamas Abdul Khalis, was really mad. This is the whole reason all of this has happened. This dude was really mad about having his family murdered 4 years prior by another Muslim group, the Black Mafia, which I get it. Beyond that, Hamas also wanted to ban the film Muhammad, Messenger of God, which wasn't even an American-made film, from being shown in theaters because he thought it was blasphemous, obviously, because God forbid you show Muhammad in anything, because he was special, I guess. Then, since he could also just do it, I guess, he also demanded a meeting with Muhammad Ali and $750 to reimburse himself for legal fees from a contempt of court citation. So this dude's really unhinged, all right? And I don't know why I ordered it this way. It started with like the most reasonable reaction to sending 11 gunmen out into the nation's capital to take hostages, but then it just progressively got more insane, right? So he's mad that like the Black Mafia killed his family. Totally understandable. I would be too. All right. I think I would go about taking my revenge differently. You know, I would probably just go after the group that killed my family rather than just a bunch of random people, but whatever, you know, cultural differences, I guess. And look, fine. You want to be mad about some foreign-made film that might show Muhammad that goes against your religion? Fine, sure, tack that on. That's just a huge trigger for Muslims. I can't even begin to understand it, but sure, whatever. Like, that's their deal. All right, but now you're just going to demand a meeting with Muhammad Ali, and you're also just going to demand $715 because you got hit with a contempt of court citation? Like, only $750? Like, go ahead. Like, you're already being ridiculous. Just go ahead and ask for like $1 billion because you're not going to get it regardless. Jimmy Carter, who's the president at the time, he clearly had better things to do. And so he called up the ambassadors from Egypt, Iran, and Pakistan, who then showed up to the district buildings and read portions of the Quran to Hamas, like over a megaphone. And that tactic actually worked. And along with, he did get the film banned. And so Hamas released all of the hostages. He didn't get to meet Muhammad Ali. And I don't think he got his $750. But he was given 21 to 120 years in prison, where he was sent to the federal penitentiary in Butner, North Carolina, where he died in 2013. So there you go. I think this episode really encapsulates like what I wanted to do with this podcast. Like, these are 3 insane stories, and you probably had never heard of any of them, right? Just never even remotely crossed your path throughout your life or in history class or anything like that. And so that's what I like about doing this show, is just illuminating these stories to show you that the world has always been an insane dumpster fire of a place. And with that, let's see what we learned.
What did we learn?
Number 1, Captain James Murder, not a real person. All right. It's called Murder Island because a bunch of people got murdered on it, right? Number 2, why isn't Puerto Rico a state? I don't know. Are we really like going to be super OCD about like the whole 50 states thing? Honestly, like we could probably get away with like splitting up California in a couple places. We can add Puerto Rico, maybe add like Guam or something. I don't know. We can probably get up to 55, maybe even 60 really easily. Do we have to do 50? Are we concerned that's going to mess up the flag? If we add an extra star in there, who cares? We need to redesign the flag anyway. Flag's boring. Number 3, the Hanafi Siege happened all because this guy's family got murdered, but he also just really wanted to meet Muhammad Ali. Next week on Our Weird World, we're doing something different. I'm going to start a series of what I'm going to call the Weird Fun Bag. It's just going to be 3 completely unrelated random stories, but just weird stories nonetheless. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Hudson, Jerome of Sandy Cove, and the 19-year duel. And we're going to do that just to start every month. It's going to be the first episode of the month for the next several months. I'm going to obviously pause between like Serial Killer September and the Halloween themed stuff. But in general, I'm just going to be doing a lot of these weird fun bags, basically because I just have a ton of stories that I want to tell you guys, but they don't fit in any given theme. So that's how I solved that problem. I'm an idea man, full of genius. So that's it. Thank you all so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird. The mixtapes got a little Hank, little Drake, a little something bumpin', thumb thumpin' on the wheel, right? The mix in our drinks a little stronger than you think. So get a grip, take a sip of that feel, right? Trucks jacked up, flat bills flipped back. Yeah, you can find us where the party's at. Yeah, baby, this is how we roll. We rollin' into town with nothing else to do. We take another lap around. Yeah. Holla at your boy if you need a ride. If you roll with me, yeah, you know we rollin' high. Up on them 37 Nittos, windows tinted, hard to see though. How fresh my baby is in the shotgun seat, oh. Them kisses are for me though, automatic like a free throw. This life I live, it might not be for you, but it's for me, though. This is how we roll. Whoa, whoa. We hanging round, singing down everything on the radio. Whoa, whoa. We light it up with our hands up. This is how we roll. This is how we do. We're burning down the night, shooting bullets at the moon, baby. This is how we roll. Whoa, whoa. And we gonna sing it to them. Yeah, we're proud to be young. We stick to our guns. We love who we love and we want to have fun. Yeah, we cuss on them Mondays and pray on them Sundays. Pass it around and we dream about one day. This is how we roll. Whoa, whoa. We hanging round, singing down everything on the radio. Whoa, whoa. We light it up with our hands up. This is how we roll. This is how we do. When the world turns ugly, I just turn and look at you, baby. This is how we roll. Whoa.